Let's talk Richard Sherman and the Seattle Seahawks now as my voice cracks to get things going. What a start. Anyway, ESPN reports that, hey, Richard Sherman, he's open to a reunion in Seattle. Now, the Seahawks appear to, I think, more or less be fine with the cornerback room right now. They are hoping to, let the young guys compete and then see what happens in terms of, does one of the young guys emerge? If not, well, then maybe they'll revisit the veteran cornerback market, which, of course, does include Richard Sherman. And I think it is a bit of a surprise that Sherman is still unsigned. That's not what I would have expected. Now, here's what Jeremy Fowler had to say about Richard Sherman. Quote, "I'm told that this is not off the table, that Sherman is still open to returning to the Legion of Boom, or what remains of it. He makes a home on the West Coast, still has a home in Seattle. Most people think he'd like to still play on the West Coast, and Seattle needs cornerback help." Fowler continued, "Nothing's working right now, but maybe closer to training camp, something could shake out. Seattle needs to figure out the Jamal Adams money allocation before they take resources elsewhere. Because a guy like Sherman, he's not going to take the minimum. This is a high-caliber player that would need a decent contract. I think a big reason why Sherman's open to a reunion is, simply put, there hasn't been much interest in him. As for Seattle, meanwhile, with where they're at in their cornerback room, on the surface, this, I think, would very clearly be a need. DJ Reed, Ahkello Witherspoon, Pierre Desir, Trey Flowers, Trey Brown, Demarius Randall competing for an outside starting cornerback role. Reed was impressive last year, but there is no number one guy. Some youth and some inexperience, and overall just not great play. Seattle, though, did already pay Ahkello Witherspoon. And as long as he looks good, I think Seattle wants to give him a chance to start, because maybe they think he can develop into the more consistent, better version that we saw in flashes in San Francisco. The consistency, of course, has not yet been there for Witherspoon. Now, Seattle were among the teams linked to Richard Sherman, at least initially, with public comments by Sherman, because he's more or less updated. The Raiders, Jets, Niners, Saints, Seattle. Here's the problem. The Raiders are out. They signed Casey Hayward. If the Niners wanted Sherman back, he'd be back already, and he's not, so I don't think that's the outcome there. The Saints could make some sense, but he's hyped up. Sherman has Paulson Adebo. Seattle wants to let the young guys compete to start. That leaves the Jets. The Jets are the most obvious fit as far as I'm concerned. Robert Saleh's there, and they need a cornerback even more than Seattle does. Here, I think, is the reality for Richard Sherman. The market's been poor. This has not been the free agency Richard Sherman was anticipating. He thought there would be more interest. I don't think Sherman's plan was to reach early July, training camp less than a month and away, and still be unsigned. I think he thought he would have found a market that paid him pretty well before this point. But he's coming off injury. He wasn't the same guy last year. He wasn't as productive before he got hurt, and he missed a lot of time with that calf issue. At his age, the muscles don't suddenly heal way faster and better. That's just not how it works. So because of that, I don't think that market's been there. So make your predictions for me, folks. Where will Richard Sherman end up signing? Make your predictions for me right now in the comments. Is it Seattle or somewhere else? Get your votes in right now. Let's hit Jamal Adams' contract then. Now, this one you guys might not like it so much. So Bucky Brooks in his column said, hey, Jamal Adams, he could get $20 million per year. And that's a lot of money, especially compared to the safety market as it sits right now. But Brooks made the argument, hey, Adams he's a pass rusher, right? 20% of the time he blitzes. Like, that's his main area. 9.5 sacks last year. You got to pay him as a pass rusher, right? Maybe. Now, I will make note, background-wise here, there was a report from ESPN out of New York that Jamal Adams had wanted $20 million a year from the Jets before he got traded. Now, Adams, can't rejected that. Said, no, that's not true. It's not what we said. And that never really came up again, and it might have been Adams trying to get his way out, or maybe it was the Jets leaking it to make Adams look bad or whatever. $20 million a year, though, is vastly more than any safety or even inside linebacker makes right now in the NFL. Now, Adams last year wasn't great in coverage, but as Brooks kind of mentioned, he was great in the box as a blitzer. 11 tackles for loss, 9.5 sacks. As almost a defensive athlete, a defensive chess piece, if you will, Adams' impact was very clear and very obvious. Now, make no mistake, you do want more in coverage from Jamal Adams. He was not great in that area. Now, he was battling through a lot of injuries. I think going side to side was tougher on him than just going north-south as a blitzer. And that led to, again, a lack of interceptions, limited pass breakups. But you know what? The lack of interceptions and arguably being better in the box has not limited players from getting paid in the past, at least at the safety position. So for Adams, look, maybe he held out, maybe he didn't from minicamp, doesn't matter that much. I think Seattle's going to pay him. I would be stunned if we got to, let's just say, week 1 of the preseason, and there was no deal yet for Jamal Adams. The question, though, is just how much is he going to make? The safety market has gone up in recent years. Justin Simmons, after getting franchise tagged, is now the highest paid safety in the NFL with his long-term deal from the Denver Broncos, $15.25 million. Budda Baker, $14.75, also not an interception guy, at least wasn't previously. But $15.25 from $14.75, that jump is not remotely similar to $20 million a year. At his core, Adams is still designated as a safety. Even if he's an off-ball linebacker in the Bobby Wagner mold, it's not $20 million per year. It would be a substantial increase for Jamal Adams, and also might have to come on more of a 5 or 6 year deal, the same deal that got Landon Collins at the time record-setting contract. Now, in terms of the highest paid defenders overall, there is a very common trend. Outside of one of the top 10, they're pass rushers. Joey Bosa, Myles Garrett, record-setting deals. They signed early with time left on their contracts, so ignore it to an extent. It's heavily backloaded. It's not that bad for those teams. It'll look fine, and, by the time they reach those average per years, they're not going to be really the number 1 highest paid guys anymore. Khalil Mack, Aaron Donald, they're all awesome players. DeMarcus Lawrence, probably a bit overpaid there for the Cowboys, $21 million. Same number as DeForest Buckner. Remember, he was traded from the Niners to the Colts, got a big-time contract. Leonard Williams eventually got a big-time contract. Frank Clark got his. Also, look, there's a trend here, right? Buckner, Williams, Clark, Ramsey were actually all traded at one point. They're not on the original team that drafted them. Chris Jones is not at $20 million per year. So what do you think? Do you think Adams is worth $20 million per year? Get your votes in for me right now in the comments section. Type in Y for yes, or if you're like, man, that's a little bit too much, type in N for no.